Hello and welcome to round 12 of the World Championship. I'm Tim Willoughby here with Hall of Famer Randy Buehler, and the players are already seated in the feature match area. We're not going to hold them up any longer, so we've got some great magic for you right here at the World Championship. Hello and welcome to round 12 of the World Championship. The format is standard. The players are seated and ready. Let's meet our players.
Shaun McLaren, Canada, winner of Pro Tour Born of the Gods.
Lars, Thailand, Max Championship.
Both these players are winners, but they've got a lot more winning to do if they want to make it into the top 4 of this tournament. Both Shaun McLaren and Lars on 6 and 5. And in spite of the fact that Shaun McLaren has seen most of his success playing with Jeskai this year, he's not the person playing the red, white and blue in this match.
Nope.
Lars with Jeskai control is the one leading things off. He's got a temple to scry with. And Shaun McLaren, the opposite side of the table, he's playing Abzan mid-range.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm starting to like this Lars deck list. He is the only one playing it, but Anger of the Gods looks really well positioned for this tournament. All the Sidisi Whip decks, all the Hornet Queen tokens. There's a lot of these mid-range decks that have said the way we're going to win the mid-range is we're going to just build up these gigantic boards of tokens and zombies and hornets. They all die to Anger of the Gods. And he's also got End Hostilities to sort of clean up whatever big creatures get into play. I think Lars' deck is actually really well positioned.
It's interesting because he's actually had this deck in one way, shape or form for a while. Speaking to Lars, it sounds like this was his backup deck for Pro Tour Khans of Tarkir.
Okay.
He ultimately ended up with Jeskai Ascendancy there, but for whatever reason decided that he was going to mix things up a bit, not just play Jeskai Ascendancy in every format at this World Championship. And this time round playing Jeskai, we saw him a little bit on camera last round. Mm-hmm. It seems formidable.
Yeah, and it sounds like his matchup against anything black-green is just tremendous. And that's a lot of what's here. Whether it's Abzan mid-range, Sidisi Whip, they all fall into this sort of broad black-green mid-range category.
So Shaun McLaren here gets down a Course of Crufix on time, has got his 3 lands on turn 3, and with an Urborg Tomb of Yulboth there, he's got access to plenty of black mana if he needs it, and then Sylvan Caryatid, meaning that he's got most colours if he really wants, but there's plenty of removal from Lars Darm's deck, such that just because these creatures are in play now doesn't mean they're going to hang around. Elspeth on top of Shaun McLaren's deck. If he can get that into play, certainly a powerful threat. Very, very powerful in block constructed, and it's made the transition fairly well, even though Wingmake Rock has done a little bit of number on the Planeswalker in some matchups. But 2 Banishing Light there in Darm's hand. That a good one for Lars Darm, but we already have our first game result. It sounds like Patrick Chapin, he's not got too much more to do to lock up his spot in the top 4, but against Yuya Watanabe's Jeskai tokens, the tokens have claimed a quick one there.
Wow.
I mean, that is what the deck will do sometimes. Patrick Chapin playing Abzan mid-range, certainly someone who's got plenty of experience with that. He was doing Abzan before Abzan was called Abzan. Shaun McLaren getting in a little cheeky hit there. But look at this hand for Darm. He's just got all sorts of things going on. He's got Prognostic Sphinx, that one of his finishers. But in the meantime, plenty of different ways of controlling the board. And enough time at the moment, he can afford to wait around to really get value out of his mass removal.
Yeah, it seems like the kind of deck that might be a little soft to 1-mana 2/1s.
I think that the same can be said of quite a few decks in this standard portion of the tournament.
I mean, all the control decks are essentially saying, well, nobody's going to show up with Jackal Pups.
And there's so many great 2/1s for 1 in this format as well.
There are. It's just there's so many great mid-range decks that feast on 1-mana 2/1s.
Yeah, I mean, in a format where people are casting 2/4s for 3 with many abilities, including 1 to gain life.
Precisely.
You need to be fairly bold to make that choice, and I don't think that too many people have gone in that direction. But Shaun McLaren here, looking a little concerned as Lars Darm happily extends his mana base. He's got lots of cards in hand, and part of that is because Shaun McLaren is kind of the master of Jeskai. He's the one that has had lots and lots of tournament success with Jeskai in various iterations and formats. He does have the Abzan Charm there to net himself a few cards at the end of turn. And that... Is that a Dune Blast?
Nice.
Not necessarily an option that I would expect to see there.
Yeah, 1 Dune Blast.
And it's something that Ari Lax in his deck that he was playing, that he won the Pro Tour with, he wasn't necessarily so big a fan of the mass removal spells, at least in the main deck. But
Yeah, he had 1 in the sideboard. He could tutor it up with Liliana too, which Shaun cannot do.
But yeah, the 1 Doom Blast may prove to be an exciting option in the face of a Prognostic Sphinx that's normally very difficult to kill. And another update from one of our back tables. It's the quick decks seem to be getting the run of the green in the feature match area at the moment. Raphael Levy's mono-red aggro deck has already taken a game from Owen Turtelwald. Turtelwald on the same black-green Constellation deck that William Jensen is playing that we saw in the feature match area just last round. That the way to beat the tokens, get in there quick.
Yeah, there's really 2 true aggro decks in this field. It's Levy and Dizani. Their mono-red aggro list is blistering out. They're not afraid to play Jackal Buffs.
Yeah, and both of them were playing Rabble Red. They both have a good pedigree when it comes to playing aggressive red decks.
It's a pretty small percentage of the field, though, relative to the way Standard would look at a bigger event.
Yeah, this is really the one tournament where you could perfectly reasonably say, part of my preparation is I'm going to look at each and every player that's going to be at the event and try and make a prediction. So more copies of Sylvan Caryatid here for Shaun McLaren. Potentially enough for Lars Darm to consider pulling the trigger on his Anger of the Gods. Darm hitting every land drop. And at beginning of combat here, Hero's Downfall, meaning that Lars Darm put to a decision, if he wants to keep that Prognostic Sphinx alive, then he is going to have to discard a card to give it hexproof.
He's
Doing
got
so
to.
will tap it, though, so it's not going to be able to get in for a hit. And crucially, it's not going to let him scry 3 this turn.
Yeah, Shaun, I think he knows what he's up against. He's seen the deck list. He knows that's all Hero's Downfall's ever going to do is tap a Prognostic Sphinx, so he's just going to do it now before Lars has time to set up his draws.
Yeah, I mean, once there's been 2 attacks, say, from a Prognostic Sphinx, then you do find yourself just on a slippery slope of my opponent's always drawing good cards. How do I get back into this game? And I guess that Shaun, with his Doom Blast, is kind of just playing for time here. He knows that there's the potential to ramp up and deal with everything apart from one of his own creatures with the Doom Blast, and that possibly part of the reason that Lars Darm pulled the trigger there on Anger of the Gods to get rid of those copies of Sylvan Caryatid. Windswept Heath off the top there, and reveals another land on top there, that a Temple of Malady. So a constant source of small plinks of life for Shaun McLaren. So he's not got too much cause to worry about his life total right now. The reason that he doesn't want that Prognostic Sphinx attacking is just that it's making Lars Darm's draw much, much better. I mean, with this sort of control deck versus mid-range, it's not quite as straightforward a matchup to predict exactly how it's going to finish. I mean, as far as Lars Darm's concerned, I guess he's always going to want to be attacking with one of his very few win conditions, but all that Shaun McLaren wants to do is just keep playing value creatures like that Siege Rhino and sort of gradually working his way through, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, his deck is grinding out incremental advantage. That's what this deck's very good at doing. Hoping that that's good enough. I mean, the tricky part for these Abzan decks in this field is that there just are decks with better late games. You know,
Yeah.
Shaun, does he even have whips? I mean, he's more on the traditional Abzan mid-range. No whips. Got a couple other ends. I mean, he's basically on 2 Saurons, 4 Siege Rhinos. He's got a couple Read the Bones. I mean, he's got a couple of nods in the direction of having a better late game, but does not have the massive engines that some of the other decks in the field have, or the massive card drawing.
It sounds like Sam Black, after his victory in round 1, is facing a little bit of a stiffer competition in round 2 of standard here, at round 12 overall. Shahar Shenhar taking the first game with his Sidisi whip deck over the red-white tokens deck. A pretty innovative lift from Sam Black. Shaun McLaren here considering his options. Both of these players primarily known for their online play. I mean, Shaun McLaren, that's very much his testing ground, how he likes to prepare for events. And Lars Dam, one of a long and storied line of Magic Online Championship winners who are going on to prove that if you're good online, chances are you're just good.
That's a good point.
I mean, there are, of course, a few extra bits and pieces to face-to-face play, reading body language, trying to get tells and so on, but the level of technical play you can achieve from playing online is so great, and the amount of extra practice you can get is so good that it's not a big surprise to me to see that the online players are continuing to dominate real-life tournament play, if you will, also. So a Scry here giving a few options, and that is Steam Augury, one of them to choose from for Lars Dam. Not a card that's necessarily seen tons of play in Standard, though. I have seen it in a few innovative red-blue control decks. This kind of red-blue control with Anger of the Gods and Banishing Light, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, I continue to like this list. Not interested in putting a Steam Augury on top of his deck, though, because he's already got one in his hand.
And effectively, that Prognostic Sphinx in play does mean that he's getting a fair amount of card selection before he even worries about casting those sorts of spells. Steam Augury, the kind of latest variation on Fact or Fiction. You're revealing the top 5, and it's the person that's revealing them that's splitting them into 2 piles and giving that kind of a decision to the opponent, rather than the original Fact or Fiction, which we have in Vintage Masters, where the opponent had to make the split.
Yeah, I think Lars needs to deal with Siege Rhino. Time to use a Banishing Light. Seems content to let Corsair hang out and do its thing. I think Lars feels like his late game is better than the Abzan mid-range deck, even if Abzan gets to sit on a Corsair.
Well, Shaun McLaren does now find that he's in the point of the game where he can cast Elspeth. And Elspeth is one that's likely to draw a reaction from Lars pretty quickly. It may well warrant a slightly bigger play from the Danish/Thai player.
Yeah, both of these guys are on the Dream Chaser list. Potentially could still win both World Championship titles this week, both the individuals and the teams.
I mean, tomorrow is our dark day. We're having a day away from Magic before we get to the World Magic Cup, and I'm sure that these players are going to appreciate that more than most, because it's a lot of Magic to play over the course of these days.
Yeah, it would be a bit of a surprise if Lars and the Thailand team made it to Sunday in the World Magic Cup, but Shaun's Canadian team is one of the favorites.
I mean, it's the only team to have 2 Pro Tour winners, right?
Oh, is that right? I hadn't thought of it. I mean, they definitely have the best 1-2 punch, because Alexander Hayne won one of the WMCQs.
I mean, the Slovak team also has...
The Slovaks team can field 3 players with Pro Tour top 8s. But yeah, that's not 2 champs, I guess.
And thinking about cards that have won Pro Tours, a Fleecemane... Nyx Fleece Ram has entered the hand of Lars Dam. A very important card for Ivan Floch when he won the Pro Tour. Not necessarily at its best in this matchup, but given that Lars Dam's on just 9 life, I'm sure he's not going to mind too much if he can pad that life total just a little bit.
Yeah, he also wants to be able to block at Corsair.
And those Rams, of course, noteworthy for the fact that they do survive Anger of the Gods, another piece in the Anger of the Gods puzzle for Lars Dam.
There's still the Dune Blast hanging out in McLaren's hand, though. Lars knows it's there from the Corsair. Keeps chipping away at Prognostic Sphinx, though. I think Lars knows that Shaun's going to have to Dune Blast eventually. Although, I mean, Shaun, meanwhile, is like, well, no, I don't actually have to Dune Blast. If I just keep attacking you with 2/4s, you're going to die before I do, no matter how many cards you scry.
But a disdainful stroke left on the top of Lars Dam's deck now, so there's not that big a window in which to make sure that the Doom Blast resolves here.
Wow, Utter End on the Banishing Light is actually threatening lethal. The Siege Rhino comes back, triggers the Drain 3, dropping Lars to 6, and now this attack is for 5+2/2.
So there's a couple of lightning strikes in Lars Dahm's hand. He's likely to have to deploy them in desperation if he wants to stay in this game.
Yeah, 2 lightning strikes pointed at Siege Rhino will keep him alive, but he'll be down to 2.
And I read the bones here from Shaun McLaren. He's saying, I kind of might want to draw that Thoughtseize because I want to make sure that the coast is clear. There's actually 2 copies of Thoughtseize. So forcing the issue from Lars Dahm from the get-go. There's Thoughtseize number 1. Now everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah, no choice.
Lars says, now is the time. And if there were an Abzan charm at this point, that would be it.
Shaun's played this game really well. I mean, the threat of that Dune Blast has allowed Lars to kind of not develop his board position. It sort of encouraged Lars to try not to develop his board position. But now Shaun's like, okay, I'll just attack you.
It's interesting. I was talking to...
Wow, now he just takes Nyx's Ram here, right? I guess either that or the Banishing Light. Either way, it might actually be the Ram. Because the life gain could become relevant.
Absolutely, yeah. The 0-5 Ram there, at the beginning of the upkeep, you're gaining life. Doesn't take too many upkeeps with gaining life plus blocking to put Lars Dahm back in a much more comfortable position.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 1 Nyx's Ram holds off 1.5 coursers.
But earlier on in the tournament, I was talking to some of the Peach Garden Oath guys about whether or not the fact that your lists are made public to your opponents changes the way that you do anything, the way that you build, the way you play. And they said, well, not really too much. The powerful cards are the powerful cards. However, in this game, the fact that Shaun has got 1 Dune Blast main and that Lars has actually seen it has completely changed the way that this game has been played out. So there goes Banishing Lights.
That's more the Courser information than the deck list information, but
yeah.
2 Coursers drop Lars to 2. He's going to have to leave the Sphinx on defense, I think. And then he just loses to a Dune Blast. I mean, I guess he's got Disdainful Stroke on top of his library, did you say? That's what he put there with the Sphinx?
I believe that's what he put there with the Sphinx, yes.
So if he leaves Sphinx on defense, Banishing Lights, a Courser, and leaves up Disdainful Stroke, then he can survive?
There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle.
Agreed. And, oh, by the way, there's another Thoughtseize coming from Shaun. So it's going to come now. Oh, right, it wasn't the Banishing Light, it was the Nyx's Ram. But now he's going to lose the Nyx's Ram, presumably.
And Shaun, even after the Doom Blast, even if that doesn't resolve, he's got Elspeth in hand.
Does Shaun have a way to kill a Nyx's Ram?
Not at present. I think that Thoughtseize is just kind of a remnant of the hand he had mere moments ago. There is Nyx's Ram from Lars Dahm, not really giving too much away.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that Shaun left it there, and because those each of those coursers is lethal, and now they aren't.
So there's Doom Blast, immediately leading to a counter spell from the other side of the board there. And Shaun might just have to say go here.
He does. I feel like he forgot that Disdainful Stroke could be on top of Lars's library. Because if he'd Thoughtseize that Nyx's Ram, he would have won the game that turn. The 2 coursers would have been lethal.
A lot of moving parts to
Agreed.
But it looks like there's a Siege Rhino in Shaun McLaren's hand here. He may have drawn his way out.
All right, fine.
Lars Dahm says, I'm going to dig. Such an aptly named card.
Basically has to find Disdainful Stroke.
Abzan Charm in response.
You have no cards to discard, do you? Well, he's empty-handed. He's literally no cards. And now it doesn't even matter if he finds an answer to the Siege Rhino because the 2 coursers can attack. One of them will get through. So Lars Dahm can't find an answer to the Siege Rhino and also a way to prevent 2 coursers from attacking him. Shaun McLaren wins game 1.
So that game 1 in the books there for Shaun McLaren. We will get a live look in at some of our other games, but before that, let's just have a few messages.
Outfit your Magic collection with the newest Khans of Tarkir accessories from Ultra Pro. You can see the full array of card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios of your favorite Magic artwork at ultrapro.com. Start on your road to the Pro Tour in Vancouver next July by playing in a preliminary Pro Tour qualifier. With more than 2,000 WPN locations running events, you're sure to find one near you. Visit magic.wizards.com/pptq for schedules and information.
Welcome to round 12 here at the World Championship, and each of these rounds have got one win. So Shaun McLaren, we've just seen him win game 1 against Lars Dam. We're going to go over across to see the current leader, Patrick Chapin, up against Yuya Watanabe. Yuya on 8-3, and Yuya appears to have Jeskai Ascendancy in play for his tokens deck. That means that it's almost certain that the 1/1 tokens on his side of the board are going to be quite a bit more powerful than those that Patrick Chapin has, presumably from an Elspeth now long departed.
I'm a big fan of this Jeskai tokens list.
I mean,
it's nice that, all the tokens, it's just, you're playing Jeskai Ascendancy kind of the way it was intended to be played.
And the way it was intended to be played is very powerful. It's something that just saying, I can play some spells, find more good spells, make my team huge. When those spells are things like Hordling Outburst, you end up with a formidable force very, very quickly indeed.
Hordling Outburst here is both making tokens and also triggering the Ascendancy to make those tokens large.
So, I mean, it does look like Patrick Chapin has a copy of Utter End in hand. He just might not have time to get it all going here. In the meantime, it sounds like there has been another result from our back table. Owen Turnwald squaring things up with his black-green Constellation deck against Raphael Levy's mono-red aggro. That's going to go to a game 3. In the meantime, though, Patrick Chapin here potentially picking up his 3rd loss if he can't find a way of dealing with all of the tokens coming from Yuya Watanabe.
Yeah, Yuya ties for first with this win, right?
Yeah, he's currently on 8-3, so this would put both of these players at
this would be 8 wins in a row if Yuya pulls this off.
I mean, this is kind of what he did at the last Pro Tour. At Pro Tour Kanzatake, he'd had a good start. He kind of had a couple of rocky moments, and then he just rallied back and said, I need to win a lot, and that's exactly what he did. The Siege Rhino on the top of Patrick Chapin's deck here, potentially a little bit of support, a little bit of extra life. He's gaining 2 life there from playing a land, thanks to the second Corsair Crew fix that he's played.
Now, a lot of these Jeskai tokens lists will have a combo built into them, right? They'll have, the combo built in.
Purse and a few other bits and pieces to.
But not Yuya.
No?
No, there's no combo here. There's no Jeskai Ascendancy combo. There's no loop. He's never going to be able to Retraction Helix and bounce an artifact for arbitrarily large creatures. He's just playing it for value. No combos, just straight up, let's fight.
Well, that plan has utterly ended. He's going to have to work with the tokens as they stand. But with 4 cards in hand and a little bit of milling, or a little bit of looting happened, he's been able to draw into a second copy of Jeskai Ascendancy right on time. It would have been lovely to have 2 in play at the same time, I'm sure, but I don't think that Yuya Watanabe is going to complain here. The question is, does he have something else that he can cast afterwards? He's got Chandra Pyromaster in hand. That's quite a nice one. He's got an End Hostilities as well, so it may be that he turns around and says, at some point, I know I'm going to have to pull the trigger, clear this board, and get my remaining points through another way.
Yeah, that's in from the sideboard. 4 Treasure Cruise for Yuya. I also love the deck designer, me.
Yeah. Interestingly, with Raise the Alarm in hand, at some point he can go, I'm going to end hostilities, end of turn, make some tokens. I'm now the only one with creatures in play at the right moment to then cast more spells and go crazy.
Yeah, he doesn't need to clear this board, though. Jeskai Ascendancy means his tokens are just better. Here he gets a loot. He gets the 2 tokens. He's like, I'm just discarding End Hostilities. My board's fine. I'm not going to need to sweep it. How do you feel about 5 2/2s? Well,
Treasure Cruise?
How do you feel about me drawing 3 cards and having 5 3/3 attackers?
Also, there may or may not be a Raise the Alarm in his hand. I'm calling it. Jeskai Ascendancy is my favorite card. It's in just about every format you can play it in.
Yeah, these 5 attackers 3/3s. Patrick has to block with his Coursers, and then he's going to get blown out by a Raise the Alarm, which is going to turn him into 4/4s.
And of course, if he doesn't block, that's just 20 damage coming through.
Just 20, no problem.
No biggie.
Tokens are going to take one for the team, too. Oh, double blocks.
Smart.
Well, I mean, Patrick figures, if you just got another trick, I'm destroyed. I may as well assume he doesn't have a trick, and now these double blocks will at least allow me to trade. And now, I mean, yeah, I see the raise the alarm as well. Triggering that ascendancy one more time here is such a savage blowout. It means Patrick takes 12, and those goblins hang out, and the coursers die.
Also, they're untapped in case anything untoward's going on.
What a blowout.
And there's a Jeskai charm now in Yuya Watanabe's hand, so he can potentially pump his team in another way if he really wants to.
Sure, or deal the last 4. I can't imagine Patrick has much life left. So this is, if we're right that 9 and 5 is good enough, this is Yuya staking a claim to a top 4 spot.
Not necessarily a big surprise to many people. Certainly one of the players talked about a lot before this World Championship. But
True.
In this kind of a field, nothing is a foregone conclusion in terms of making the top 4.
Okay, sounds like Patrick's at 4.
That's correct. Soren?
Oh, Soren, some life link. It helps a little. Jessica
And there's
charm
the
your
Jeskai
face.
charm. Does not help very much at all.
Does not help enough. Congratulations, Yuya Watanabe. Now, it may be the case that he needs tiebreakers. It may be the case that, he'd love to win one more and be in for sure. I mean, 10 and 4 is absolute rock solid lock.
Absolutely.
Right. 9 and 5 is probably worst case tied for it.
Yeah, and if you're going to be tied, then Chapin is in a great spot. For
Yeah,
a
Chapin
kickoff.
was going to have the best breakers. Yuya, having started 1-3, his breakers can't be awesome. So, I think it's congratulations, welcome to first place. We like your chances of making Sunday, but he'll feel better if he gets that 10th win.
I'll bet he will. And, the pro points don't hurt too much either. But
Yeah,
back to our main match here between Lars Dam and Shaun McLaren. We've kicked things off with a few Scrylands from Dam. We can see McLaren's hand there. He's got the Thoughtseize ready. He couldn't play it on turn 1 as he was playing a tapped land. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see it coming here because there's not too much else happening on turn 2 for the Canadian. Nissa Worldwaker has come in for Shaun McLaren. That an interesting one that we saw last round from Yuki Ichikawa as well. But in the meantime, let's have a look at what Dam is working with off that Thoughtseize. 2 negates, Pearl Lake Ancient there, Prognostic Sphinx, Disdainful Stroke, and a Plains. Let's just bring that up for you there. In terms of early game, Dam not necessarily threatening too much. Do you really want to have both of your, or 2 of your win conditions in hand this early, or are they kind of dead draws for now?
No, they're terrible. I mean, they're not going to help you maneuver the game into an interesting spot, and they make you kind of vulnerable to randomly getting them Thoughtseized.
It's interesting because Dam had said that he felt like most green-black decks were a really great matchup for him.
I know. And yet he lost that first game. I think Shaun, with his Thoughtseize, he's got to make a decision about whether he wants to attack those late-game victory conditions or whether he wants to try to take the cards that are actually going to be relevant to the game over the course of the first 5 or 10 turns.
It's interesting, yeah. I mean, it looks like Disdainful Stroke is the pick here. That one that is going to stop the likes of his Siege Rhinos as well as his Sorens, for example.
Yeah, Siege Rhino in hand already. Yeah, I like that. I don't think Lars is happy to have those cards in his hand. You're almost doing him a favor if you take one of those away rather than a relevant counter.
Yeah, for now, McLaren just looking to say, I'm going to hit 4 lands on time, and I'm going to cast a 4/5 that drains you for 3 before you can do anything about it.
He also knows about the negates, so he'll be careful with his planeswalkers.
Yeah, we saw him not playing Read the Bones that turn, presumably because he knew it was just going to be walking into a counterspell. It was going to be giving Dam something to do with his mana that otherwise he just was going to have to sit there. So a fetch land, finding a forest for McLaren here, and he's throwing out an Abzan Charm. Now, if I'm Dam here, I think that you got to counter that, right? Just because otherwise you're not getting anywhere.
He agrees with you.
I love it when I'm right.
You could both be wrong. It's possible.
No, yeah, it's certainly possible.
It's interesting how Shaun now has a window where He wants to play Siege Rhino. It's his natural turn 4 play, but he's also got a window where he doesn't have to worry about negate. So yeah, he's going to read the bones.
And he didn't have the
he
land
didn't have the
to play
fourth land anyway.
play the Rhino.
Yeah, that Abzan Charm was bait. Well, I mean, he'd also be okay drawing 2. But he needed to resolve one of those card drawing cards. Make sure he can find some lands.
Yeah, step 1, Lars not drawing very well, has gone absolutely fine for Shaun. He now just needs to make sure that Lars' step 1, which is Shaun not drawing very well, doesn't work out at all. Finds the land in the form of a temple there, so gets an extra scry.
Pushes to the bottom.
And a dissolve is a great draw for Lars Daum here.
It is.
Yeah, this is very much a game of information. In between Corsa's giving away some information about what Shaun McLaren's doing, and Thoughtseizes is telling a tale
taps
for
out
Lars
for the
Daum.
Prognostic Sphinx on turn 5. Now Shaun has to decide whether to jam Nissa or Siege Rhino. Knowing about the negate as one of the, 3 cards left? He knows it's negate, Pearl Lake Ancient, and a mystery card for Lars. It's got to be pretty tempting to play Nissa here, I would think. And I guess it gets attacked. Maybe Prognostic Sphinx does enough damage that you don't really want your Nissa.
And it takes a couple of swings to deal with Nissa.
Takes a couple of swings, and there's a backup Nissa after that, so it's an interesting spot.
Well, that amount of mana does not easily cast a Siege Rhino. So
Goes for Nissa while the coast is clear.
And that Kaiser Koalos is now a 4/4 elemental creature with trample. And of course, because it had... So, yeah. Even though Prognostic Sphinx attacking there, Nissa just about managing to survive. And in principle here, Shaun could tick up Nissa and then just replace Nissa with another one if he wants to get really greedy and just say, I've got a bunch of 4/4s.
Right.
They match up very, very well against your Anger of the Gods. Just please don't have End Hostilities.
Right. Now, he does still know about that negate, though, so I think he'll be on the Siege Rhino plan. Wow, pushed all 3 to the bottom, did Lars. I think Shaun is more likely to play Siege Rhino. It also frees him up to attack with his 4/4 Caves of Koilos if he doesn't need the mana from it.
Yeah, I mean, he's just drawn Elspeth.
All right, a second land. Attacks for 8.
And Lars just takes it down to 12.
Yeah.
It's a 1.5 turn clock.
Yeah, he's not even going to go for Siege Rhino here. It's interesting. He can go for Courser, or he can leave up Abzan Charm.
I don't tempting to just leave up the charm here. I'm not sure the Corsair
Yeah, me
necessarily
too.
achieves a whole lot.
Right. I mean, you've already put... Because those are 4/4s, Lars basically has to come up with End Hostilities.
Yeah, I mean, next turn, you know that even if that first Nissa gets dealt with, you have another Nissa that can make another 4/4.
Right. And yeah, Shaun he reached for the Courser, but he's decided to leave up the Abzan Charm mana. I think if nothing more interesting comes up, he'll plan to draw 2 cards with it. I don't think it's time to start tapping Prognostic Sphinx yet. I don't know. Maybe if Lars leaves it on defense. Maybe you don't want him to scry. He has pushed 4 cards to the bottom with his 4 scries. So yeah, Shaun is like, all right, you're clearly digging. I don't want you to dig anymore. Wow. Actually baits out a negate.
Yeah, if ever you needed a signal that someone needs to find a card.
It also does finish off the Nissa. So I think that negate from Lars is correct. It's not like he's just getting the scry out of it. He's also finishing off the Nissa.
And plenty of thought here from Lars Daum as he looks at the top 3 cards of his deck. Shaun McLaren, he's got the patience of a man who knows that he's currently winning. So much easier. Like, no one's ever going to make you sweat when you'll sit there going, well, if nothing changes, I've got this.
A big result from outside the feature match area that just came in. Yuki Ichikawa defeats Ivan Flock.
So Ichikawa now 7-5.
Yep. Flock picks up the fatal 6th loss.
Yeah, on 5 losses, it's kind of an outside shot, we think. But 6, yeah, that's the end of Flock's day in terms of looking to be a world champion. Unless he's looking to be a world team champion, in which case he'll have to wait for a little while yet. And that there, a dynamite hand for Shaun McLaren. You can see that little ghost of a smirk on his face. We've seen that before, and it normally comes around the time that he's doing something that's going to put him in a position to win another trophy.
Doesn't have a 4th land, though. I mean, attacking for 8 is a fine play.
And by a 4th land, we kind of mean a 6th, right?
Yeah. Is Lars already on 4? Yeah, Lars falls to 4. He needs to deal with those lands. Block one of them with the Sphinx, but he's got to deal with the other one. And I'm not sure he's got anything.
Well, there's a Pearl Lake Ancient in his hand.
Is he up to 7?
That's a pretty decent Flame Tongue Kabu. As much as Surak Dragonclaw is something that can ambush things, it seems like Pearl Lake Ancient is the A plan in terms of jumping in the way of creatures.
Now, McLaren does know about that Pearl Lake, way back from that Thoughtseize at the beginning of the game. McLaren is sitting on an Utter End. So, I mean, it could be that he attacks, he waits for the Pearl Lake, then he can clear a path. It's got to be the way he plays this, right?
He's 1 mana short to do that.
Oh,
right?
He's 1 mana short because he doesn't have the sixth land. And attacking with 1 land doesn't do anything because the Sphinx can just block.
Tantalizingly close.
So does that mean read the bones? Does that mean Siege Rhino? I mean, if he taps one of his lands for Siege Rhino, then we know Lars can dissolve it. But Shaun hasn't seen it dissolve. If he goes for... Is there still a negate in Lars's hand?
Both the negates that Shaun has seen have already been cast.
Right, but is that a 3rd one? Or is our card viewer behind?
Well, it looks like Shaun is saying... That is a 3rd negate, and Shaun is saying, I don't fancy my chances this turn.
So he left up Utter End. He left up 4 mana for Utter End, knowing Pearl Lake would come down, and now he can say, go away.
One way or another, that Pearl Lake Ancient's not going to be in play.
Lars can save it by returning 3 lands, but then he'll only have 4 lands in play. He'll be playing a 5th. He won't actually be able to replay the Pearl Lake for a couple of turns. He doesn't have a couple of turns.
And another result from the back tables. Owen Turtenwald, in spite of losing his first game to Mono Red Aggro, found a way to turn it around.
Oh, wow.
He's defeated Raphael Levy 2 games to 1.
Yeah, that should be a good matchup for Owen.
So he's 7-5. Raph dropping to 6-6.
And now Lars is trying to figure out whether he wants to pick up the 3 lands and save the Pearl Lake, or whether he's going to need all 7 lands in play. I think you save it, right?
I mean, if he
doesn't have a land to play next turn anyway, so he's kind of only picking up 2 lands.
Yeah, it looks like Lars feels differently. He's letting that one slide. I guess if he's thinking about maybe having
and
to cast...
hostilities off the top. Did he put that there? I don't remember him.
I don't believe he did.
Yeah, I don't think he did either. I think that's a natural top deck. Now he's greedily attacking and scrying. This turn just got a lot easier.
It's not that greedy if you know you're going to be blowing the world up, right?
Sure. Hastily, maybe. And hostilities. That was the card he needed to get out of this. And with Shaun scuffling on mana, it's actually particularly brutal.
Yeah, you get to do the twist of the knife. Not only do you kill the creatures, but you kill nearly 50% of Shaun's lands. There's the big explosion.
He's able to leave up negate, but not dissolve. So land into Rhino. There's the land.
This game is not over yet.
Yeah, McLaren needed a land, but now he can resolve. Presumably he goes Rhino here.
I mean, Rhino is...
Oh, he's going to go Courser. Interesting.
Unravel the Ether.
For those Banishing Lights. Courser Courser can potentially attack for 2, and then the Siege Rhinos comes into playability would be lethal.
It seems like a safe choice. Nyx Fleece Ram, the pickup for Lars Dam here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're now getting cards that were scried to the top.
Of course, the Ram is something else that can get hit by Unravel the Ether if Shaun McLaren so chooses. It is an enchantment.
Interesting. All right. He's got a Rhino that he could go for. But he's got to be at least a little worried about Dissolve by now. He's got Planeswalkers he could go for, but he's got to worry about Negate. He's got Unravel the Ether, which could clear a path for Courser. He's got Read the Bones.
So he leads off with Read the Bones, knowing that he's already got some gas, even if this gets countered.
Right. Think you have to negate if you're Lars. Yeah, that's what he does.
And Lars says, yes, I am Lars. That means I have to negate.
It's tricky, though. I mean, your opponent's still got, what, 5 cards in his hand? And they're not lands. We know they're not lands.
Yeah, always the danger. I'm always worried when I'm playing mainly limited games, it must be said, where someone just consistently doesn't seem to have enough lands, but I can't kill them fast. Because when they do hit their lands, those spells are going to be something pretty special.
Well, Courser finds a land.
And shows that there's another Read the Bones coming.
Island was Lars's last draw.
So plenty going on in Shaun McLaren's hand here. And now might be Rhino time.
That mana can cast either the Rhino or the Sorin.
Looks like he's going for Sorin to start with. And there's the Dissolve.
Yep. Lars fighting.
Yeah, I mean, this, in some respects, this control deck might have more counter magic than the blue-black control. It seems to me like there's an unending stream of counter magic coming from Lars Dam, and that making it kind of difficult for Shaun McLaren to do the final points.
Yeah, Lars can maybe actually be able to turn the corner here. He needs a card drawing spell is what he needs. He needs one of his 3 dig through times or one of his 3 steam auguries. He just needs to kind of fill his hand up so that he can keep trading 1 for 1. I mean, as it is, he's trading 1 for 1, but Shaun is still got 3, 4, 5 threats in his hand. He's just only been able to deploy 1 per turn. Now Lars is basically out.
Yeah, I mean, 1 per turn has just been a factor of the fact that he's a little bit short on mana. Right. That's now cleaning up, at which point...
Well, here's the Steam Augury. Okay.
Now we get to play a fun little sub-game.
Yes, we do. Steam Augury. Lars is going to split them into 2 piles, and Shaun is going to decide which pile Lars gets, just like Fact or Fiction.
So, yeah, lands and spells. Chances are there's going to be some lands on each pile. I'm guessing that it's Jace's Ingenuity and Prognostic Sphinx in separate piles, and then a few lands with each.
I think you put 2 lands with the Ingenuity because the Sphinx is better. None of the lands are Scry lands, right? Oh, there is a Scry. He's going to put Scry land. Interesting. Sphinx with more lands. Isn't the Sphinx better than the Jace's Ingenuity?
Well, I guess the Sphinx is better, assuming it has fuel to keep it alive, and that's the fuel to keep it alive.
Yeah, if I'm Shaun, I think I give him Jace's Ingenuity.
McLaren here having a good little think. Let's not forget there's going to be some card drawing by Shaun McLaren once this is finished resolving.
Yeah, there's a Read the Bones at the bottom of the stack. Lars obviously hoping to come up with a counterspell here for the Read the Bones. Didn't do that. I mean, Jace's Ingenuity cannot be cast this turn either. Lars has got 4 untapped lands. It's all the more reason to give him the Jace's Ingenuity. It's kind of inefficient.
But Shaun here kind of going through the decision trees.
Yeah, I mean, it could turn into 3 really good cards, right? And then you might regret it, but... I mean, the Sphinx is already a really good card.
So 2 cards here. These are the cards being looked at by Shaun McLaren. He chooses to stick them both at the bottom from the Scry 2, and then draws Elspeth and another Courser. And a Thoughtseize ready to either take Jace's Ingenuity or take the best card that it finds.
Get rid of that. No more blocking, no more extra life for you.
Yeah, Lars currently on 6 life. Looks like he's likely to be going down to 4
Right.
pretty shortly.
Yeah, clearing a path for this Courser is quite relevant. Now next turn, McLaren's threatening lethal again with Courser plus Rhino.
Yeah, the speed bump of the Nyx Fleece Ram now well and truly steamrolled out. And Shaun McLaren doesn't seem overly unhappy with how everything's going here. It's taken a little bit longer than perhaps he might have thought was ideal, but the control deck here from Lars Dam hasn't quite been able to turn the screws in the way it needs to.
Let's see what Jace can find.
Jace's Ingenuity, 3 new cards. One of them's a land. One of them looks to be another Steam Augury.
Yep, I think the third one's a land.
So lots of digging, but not necessarily a whole lot of treasure.
I mean, he's got the mana for the Steam Augury, but...
oh, we got a Rhino endgame coming.
Yeah. Yeah, here's clear path.
And Lars Dam says, I'm going to make you work for it.
I don't know if Lars saw that Siege Rhino from a Courser. But I mean, this game, Lars should know this game. So if he'd seen the Siege Rhino...
I don't believe that he did see the Siege Rhino.
Didn't see the Siege Rhino? Yeah, the Courser wasn't in play early. So yeah, Lars basically going to have to Steam Augury here, hope to hit multiple good cards, because he knows he's going to lose the best one to the Thoughtseize. But that's what his hand says to do. This matchup doesn't look that awesome for him. Yeah, I have this Rhino card. Okay, never mind.
Yep,
good
there's
game.
the handshake. So Shaun McLaren, he advances to 7 and 5. Lars Dam now on 6 and 6. Rattling through the matches here in the feature match area, you can see that 2 matches now complete. We've got, actually, there's 3 matches complete. Josh Hatter-Layton was not in the feature match area at the point that we started our round here, but we've moved across his match against Sivka such that we may see a little bit of that depending on how time goes. In the meantime, though, we've got Sam Black with his red-white tokens deck up against Shahar Shenhar. This is game 3. Sidisi Whip on the left of our screen for Shenhar, red-white tokens for Sam Black, and a pretty busy board for both players. Hornet Queen facing down Wingmate Rock, and each of them brought a friend. We'll find out our life totals soon enough. It seems likely that the early aggression of red-white tokens has been slightly dampened by the life gain of Courser of Crucifix.
Yeah, the fact that Jensen has 8 lands in play and a Hornet Queen, sorry, Shenhar has 8 lands in play and a Hornet Queen, has to be really good for him.
Yeah, Sam here, he wasn't able to flip up his Ashcloud Phoenix and keep it around for what must presume be another iteration of it having been killed off. But with a Monastery Swift Spear, he's got a couple of spells there to get prowess, but chooses just to pass back as he's not able to really attack with it
Yeah, there's 2 Death Touchers over there.
And a Whip of Erebos appears to be in Shahar Shenhar's hand. Starts off with a Courser of Crucifix and just passes things back. Erase the draw for Sam Black. Lots of target for that piece of removal. Currently, all of them are Courser of Crucifix, but we know that there's something lurking in Shahar Shenhar's hand, which is a little bit more enticing as a card to deal with, that being Whip of Erebos, and the Disdainful Stroke will do nothing at all to deal with the 1 mana erase. The 1, 2, 3 there for Black. Currently on 14 life to Shahar Shenhar's 17. We know that the Sidisi Whip deck, though, is potentially a little bit difficult to deal with. Those insects do not respond very well to removal, and this game could go on for a while from here. The 4th Courser of Crucifix on top. Double erase from Sam Black. And with the second one, it must be much more tempting to start thinking about those copies of Courser of Crucifix. Now, each of these players are on 7-4, which puts them in a great spot to potentially make a run at the final 4.
Yeah, big game.
And speaking of 4s, we have all 4 of those Courser of Crucifix in play at this point. So every land that comes into play for Shahar is going to be worth 4 life to him. And that enough that it starts to become a pretty big deal. This is our deciding game in the match, so we're not entirely sure how each player has sideboarded. It may well be that Sam has gone to a slightly more controlling build, knowing that there's going to be lots and lots of creatures on both sides of the board.
I was just about to say that Chandra's the kind of card that let Sam actually compete on the card advantage front, but that's what the Disdainful Stroke is for. None of that, says our defending champ.
Instead, I'm going to gain 4 life, and I've just drawn a dig through time.
Crazy.
How do you feel about that? Sphinx's Revelation, still there in spirit.
If I'm Sam Black, I am rooting for 9 and 5 to be good enough. It's hard to imagine the sequence of draws that gets Sam back into this from here.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about the kind of different clocks that different decks present, Sam Black's deck kind of wants to be a fairly long way into its game plan by now. And with Shahar Shenhar on 24 life, with a ton of creatures on board, this is not where Black wants to be.
Digging through time.
So you don't let get the seal.
So of the 7, Sam Black knows that one of them is that card that was on the top of Shenhar's deck. The rest of them will be a mystery.
Saw a Whip, saw a Doomwake Giant. God, Doomwake Giant seems insane in this matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much Constellation in the Channel Fireball Sidisi Whip as we saw in the Constellation version that Peach Garden Oath is playing, but still some.
Enough to get a few things going. Dig through time here, getting Shenhar to exactly what he needs. And Shenhar pushing to try and make top 4 of a second World Championships.
Pretty impressive. And there's another Hornet Queen. Yeah, Doomwake can clean up most of those tokens. Sam will be down to the 2, 3, 4 flyers.
They themselves being held off by a couple of insects.
Yep. And we're actually kind of almost at the point where Shahar can start just attacking with his coursers.
Yeah, that when the utility creatures start getting stuck in, it's not a great sign.
Yeah.
Depending on which side of the table you're supporting, of course. Plenty of support all over the world for both of these players. And actually, Shahar Shenhar's family are here supporting him in
just
the building.
like last year. Plays the Whip as well, which kills the Swift Spear, I think.
It should do, yeah. It is another enchantment. It will be triggering Doomwake Giant. Shahar there pointing it out, and Sam Black says, I'm going to erase in order to get a prowess trigger to get rid of your whip and make the world a better place. But those bird tokens now just 1/2s as well. So Shahar Shenhar here able to attack without too much worry of his coursers being given a hard time.
Yeah, Shahar might have wanted to wait to play the Whip on a turn where he had the ability to respond to an erase by at least activating it once.
Well, it's activated at sorcery speed.
Oh, you're right. Never mind.
That one.
No, but still, he plays it, and then after it resolves, he has priority, so he can activate it before Sam can erase it.
It was a response to the Doomwake trigger, though. Because when
that's the piece I'm missing.
Yeah. So Sam here playing another Monastery Swift Spear. We've just reached that stage in the game where many of the cards in Black's deck just kind of outclassed.
Well, I mean, here's Arc Lightning. We're out of Death Touchers now. Here's another erase to get rid of the Doomwake Giant. I mean, Sam's fighting a good fight here.
And those 2 spells, of course, mean both those Monastery Swift Spears are 3 power.
Yep.
Murderous Cut to deal with Wingmate Rock, so Sam's not going to be gaining any life here off this attack. And on 6, can he now even afford to attack? Just the one Monastery Swift Spear coming in. I believe that was for 3 points of damage, nearly getting Shahar down to 20.
Don't want to draw from exile now.
I didn't realize we were at risk of that. Well,
Land off the top means that dream is likely not going to be one that's realized anytime soon.
Also, I thought it was.
Of course, course of Krufix doing plenty of work for Shahar Shen here.
Yeah, double block will actually take one of them out, yeah? Oh, he blocked 2 of them. Okay.
He had to block 2 just to stay in the game.
That should do it.
So Shahar Shenhar goes to 8 and 4. Meanwhile, Sam Black down at 7 and 5.
So we've got Yuya and Patrick at 9-3. Shahar is 8-4, and then Yamamoto is either... It's Yamamoto, Jensen happening outside the feature match area, yeah?
I believe so, yeah. So we've got one...
Still in progress, sounds like.
Yeah, we've got one more match for you in the feature match area. This is our bonus match. We've got plenty of bonus magic while I've been in the booth. Been thoroughly enjoying that. We've got, on the right of our screen, Josh Utter-Leighton just casting a Hornet Queen here. And by the looks of things, we see that Ivan Floch's decks have continued to be played by Stanislav Sivka once we get into the standard rounds, because Blue-Black Control is his deck, and he's got to decide what he wants to do about that Hornet Queen. The answer is a disdainful stroke.
These guys are 5 and 6. So not super relevant to top 4 consideration, but still money and pro points on the line.
Absolutely.
Also, for the record, I could just watch these guys play Magic with nothing on the line. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, channel Fireball, or just channel Sivka and Utter-Leighton, potentially a pretty popular channel. And look at the number of cards in Stanislav Sivka's hand. He's only on 7 life, but a control deck, once it's hit the point of the game where it's got, you know, best part of 10 lands in play and best part of 10 cards in hand, can't be too unhappy.
Yeah, it really feels like Josh in this DC Whip deck is designed to beat the other mid-range decks. That's what they really want to do. That's what they're set up to do. They've got these much more powerful engines than the other mid-range decks. But you know what? The reason you play Blue-Black Control is that you have the best late game. You get to feast on all the flavors of mid-range.
And Josh Utter-Leighton here, not too much going on. He's got Soul of Innistrad in his graveyard, so he will be able to get back some creatures. More interestingly, though, is what's in his hand, because it does appear that he's, in addition to the Farika God of Affliction in his hand, he's just drawn another Hornet Queen, and it's come straight down. And this one looks like it might be a little bit closer to resolving. Reclamation Sage, the other card in Utter-Leighton's hand. That a good answer to Perilous Fault if Sivka ends up casting it. So just not quite the right answers in Sivka's hand here. He might be tempted to dig through time to find one, because Hero's Downfall, while it's good at dealing with most creatures, it's not necessarily the perfect answer to a queen that comes along with 4.
Yeah, he does have enough mana to Perilous Fault and activate it all on the same turn, though. So, I mean, he could effectively trade the Vault for the Queen. Reclamation Sage doesn't get the job done at 9 mana.
Sivka having a little thought. This the chess master who's quite happy to carefully manage the clock and use his time effectively. These, of course, untimed rounds. Part of the reason we're able to bring so much bonus magic in these last few rounds of day 2 of the World Championship. And Sivka says, yeah, fine, you've got a Hornet Queen. I'm still going to dig through time. It's just that now I'm going to spend loads of mana on doing so and do it at the end of your turn. 7 cards. He sees more card drawing. It looks like that's at least part of the option of what Sivka's going for here. He's taken Jace's Ingenuity.
It's a lot of cards in his hand.
Absolutely. And this kind of... It's interesting to me, Sivka is one of the players that I feel like you really can't just say, oh, he's likely to play such and such a deck. We've seen him top 8 a Pro Tour.
Oh, his range is
with
insane.
The most aggressive decks imaginable.
Yes.
Also, he loves playing control decks, and then he won a Pro Tour playing combo. Everything's in his range. Here he says, Perilous Vault is my choice.
Yeah, he despised away the Farika first. and then plays the Vault. He sees the Reclamation Sage, but he's got enough mana to activate Vault. So now he's just got to decide, does he really want to take 6 and go down to 2? I mean, it's activating this Vault end step is a lot nicer than activating it now, because it means Josh wouldn't be able to follow up with a creature. But saving 6 points of life is also nice. So,
and given that he's had the Despise, he knows pretty much what's going on.
Yeah, it's Reclamation Sage and a card off the top.
So the big question is, having seen Josh Layton's entire deck list, how confident does he feel against a random card?
All right. Well, he doesn't want to take 6.
I can understand that.
Yeah, it's a tricky spot.
And I guess there's also the Soul of Innistrad that can potentially get other things back to be recast. Josh, not with quite enough mana to do too much in that regard, though.
He doesn't have too much. He's got a Temple and a Reclamation Sage.
No, in terms of creatures to get back with the Soul.
Sure.
Plays a Temple and gets a little look at the top card. That goes to the bottom pretty quickly. And here comes the Soul of Innistrad, getting back Farika and that Hornet Queen. I mean, this is one of the ways that Green-Black potentially deals with control, is it just says, I have a lot of threats that potentially can come into play more than once. Can I run you out of removal? It doesn't necessarily build up as big a board as it may have done in, say, the match that we saw from Huey Jensen, where he was building up a huge board in a kind of grindy match. It says, I've got lots of threats, and gradually, at some point, one of them's going to stick. Now, baiting the Perilous Vault has been kind of good here in terms of Farika, because Farika's indestructible. Perilous Vault exiles things. Now it's in play. It might be quite difficult to deal with. I believe it's the first god we've seen in play all weekend. We've not seen Karanos from the Is It Control deck. I think that would have been a reasonable consideration.
I think there was a Karanos in one of the lists. I didn't see one. Certainly,
yeah, I think this is the first one on camera.
Yeah, and this is precisely why Sifka was tempted to take 6 down to 2 and leave his Perilous Vault around, was to prevent Josh from putting something into play in his second main phase.
As it is, though, that god is around. It's unlikely to become a 5/5 creature anytime too soon.
Right, but exiling creatures to get 1/1s is a relevant ability. Your opponent's on 7.
Sifka says, I've got lots of mana. I'm going to use some of it to draw cards. Jace's ingenuity there, finding him 2 lands on the Thoughtseize. I mean, getting rid of the Hornet Queen that's just gone back into hand is tempting, but on 7 life, it comes at a cost that is certainly relevant at this point.
Do what you got to do.
And Sidisi there also just chilling out in Josh Layton's hand. That another way of getting extra creatures into play.
Takes the Sidisi, not the Hornet Queen.
I mean, I guess that if you have any kind of counter magic that can deal with the Hornet Queen, then Sidisi's the one that means you might play an extra threat in the same turn, right? I think that's another Soul of Innistrad there.
It's a good draw.
And that, I guess, what this kind of deck's trying to do is say, I've got lots of powerful cards. I'm going to draw them because there's plenty of them, and sooner or later, you're going to have trouble. It's funny, actually, as much as I was saying, oh, getting up to the right amount of devotion might be tricky, Hornet Queen gets you a long way there on its own. So Josh here having a little think, figuring out how best to deal the final quarter of Stanislav Sifka's 20 life.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real question is he playing spells, or is he using his mana to activate Farika?
I mean, his mana is neatly sort of diversified such that he can get quite a few activations each turn. I think that as long as he has the soul in hand, it's tempting to start off by playing creatures from hand because he doesn't want to be eating things that he might later be getting back with the soul, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm. On the other hand, though, he can use Pharika to force Sifka to answer just the Pharika. The fact that Perilous Vault exiles is actually potentially annoying against a soul. Right? Let the soul resolve. Untap, play a vault, activate it. So yeah, Josh leaves his mana untapped. I think he's on the Pharika plan, which makes a lot of sense to me.
I mean, Perilous Vault is good against everything that Josh is doing, right? It's good against Pharika too.
Right, so the best thing Josh can do is force Sifka to get only one card with it.
Got it, yeah. So plenty of maneuvering here. Sifka already up a game. It's the sort of thing that in any other tournament, pretty much imaginable, Sifka would probably be quite happy to say, I'm a game up here. I don't think you can kill me. That's not going to happen here. Someone is going to win each and every one of these games. And if Sifka wins this one, then he's won the match. But we may be here for a while. Get comfortable, guys.
Yeah, Josh makes a couple of tokens. Sifka, did he Hero's Downfall one? Yeah, he uses Hero's Downfall on one of them. Takes one.
One enchantment stakes. With Death Touch, not necessarily the most relevant ability in this matchup, but you never know.
There's a Prolake Ancient in Sifka's hand.
So the God of Affliction, creating those black-green snake enchantment creature tokens. Watching on as they do some good work for Josh Utter-Leyton. I mean, Sifka's going to have to pull the trigger on this vault fairly soon.
He just shipped the turn without doing anything, I think. I thought I saw Josh untapping.
Reclamation Sage, simply a 2/2 at this point.
Yeah, Josh adding enough damage to probably force Sifka to respond. Nope. Stanislav is still patient. Gotta love it. Only the last point of life matters.
So as much as we've seen him play lots of types of decks, he's a true control player at heart.
Seems to be.
Okay, so now we have a lethal board. If ever we're going to see some action from Stanislav Sifka, it's now. Now, the minimum amount of action would be a Hero's Downfall on one of these creatures, right? So maybe that's Sifka's line for now.
Yeah, he could also go Prolake Ancient. I mean, he can always pick it up if he wants to vault. Yeah, flash out the Prolake Ancient, eat the Reclamation Sage, take 2. Or 1.
3 life left for Stanislav Sifka, but now he has a way of picking up his Radiant Fountains, potentially getting a little bit more life. Milking every turn he can from this game in order to make sure that his mass removal is as effective as possible.
Yeah, he's been sitting on a Perilous Vault for multiple turns, too. He's trying to get Josh to commit more to the board. And Josh is kind of forced to commit more to the board because those tokens, there's not enough food to threaten lethal.
Yeah, I mean, he's not necessarily going to be able to get... I mean, he doesn't need very many threats, I guess, is the thing. 2 is almost the perfect number.
Right, but, I mean, Sifka has been forcing him to play the second threat. Tempting him to play a third, which Josh has resisted.
Yeah, and a Hand of Sullivan and Stratton Hornet Queen means that at some point, good things are going to happen for Josh Utter-Leyton. It's just a matter of when. attacks here, prompting an activation of Farika, creating another snake token to block with. Death touch enough to mean that this is not as lopsided a fight as it first appears.
Right. I think Sifka was planning to pick up the Pearl Lake anyway, so...
So he's figuring out which lands he's going to use to cast the Pearl Lake Ancient. He's going to tap all of them, bounce the 3 that he most wants to replay. And there's the Pearl Lake Ancient back again, and miraculously, there's a Radiant Fountain, +2 life for me. Thank you very much, 5 life. All of that hard work from Josh Atherlayton to get those 2 points of life so quickly undone. Satyr Wayfinder on the top there for Josh Atherlayton. Normally the 1/1 body not particularly exciting, but at this point I'm sure that Josh would take the damage however he can get it, and the fact that it can put potentially more creatures in his graveyard could be very, very relevant here. But Josh says no, I'm going to activate my Polluted Delta, shuffle things up. I'm not even sure that he actually even searched for a land there. I think he was literally just looking for the shuffle.
Seems to have found a better draw.
Yeah, I think that would be a reasonable description.
Whip of Erebos on top of his library now.
The whip giving all of his creatures lifelink and so much more. So Stanislav Sivka says, attacking for 2? Yep. Attacking for 2 is all right. I can live with that.
Yeah, the snakes have Death Touch, so Pearl Lake doesn't want to fight them.
If you were looking for grindy magic, there is no magic grindier than 24 pros in a room with no time limits. This is your steel cage match. No submissions, there must be one victor. So that there, a Thoughtseize from Stanislav Sivka. He wants to know what's going on. He sees Hornet Queen, Course of Krufix, and that Soul of Innistrad. He goes to 1 life for casting it, but by the looks of things, he's not too worried about his life total just now. He does have the opportunity to play one of his life gain lands from hand, or even potentially bounce that Radiant Fountain to play that again if he so chooses.
Takes the Hornet Queen, of course.
And there's a second Radiant Fountain, so up to 3 life. Josh Atherlayton trying to get a feel for what he's already seen and what's still to come. One of the benefits,
he's also looking for food, right? I mean, Farika is it down to just that Hornet Queen if he wants to make a snake here?
I believe so, yeah.
The snake would, in theory, be lethal. Oh, his Pearl Lake's attacking too, so making a snake gives him the ability to potentially block the Pearl Lake. But does he really want to eat a Hornet Queen when there's a whip on top of his library?
Yeah, and I think that this is what Sivka's been going for. He wants to engineer a position where Josh is forced into a bad decision. I'd hesitate to call it a mistake. It's one of those things where there's a rock and a hard place.
Right. He's left that Farika in play a long time. I mean, he's traded Hero's Downfalls for multiple snakes when he has a Perilous Vault in his hand that could potentially sweep away Farika and all the tokens.
And Josh says, I'm going to block with Corsair. Stan, a little surprised perhaps, gets a last note of what was on top of Josh's deck and says, all right, let's figure something out here. Sivka, a very patient player. Another one that I don't think is necessarily phased by having multiple very long rounds.
Sure. He's going to go ahead and play the Perilous Vault now. Josh still has to decide whether he wants to eat the... Well, like eating the courser to present lethal makes a lot of sense here.
Yeah.
That should force the Perilous Vault. I mean, I think Sifka, he knows about that Soul of Innistrad. He'd love to have gotten the Soul of Innistrad inside of Perilous Vault. I think that's why he's been slow rolling it quite so long. And Josh just was not willing to commit it to the field. I mean, just content to chip away with those snake tokens from Farika and force Sifka to answer that.
So there is the third snake token. Courser of Krufix getting a last bite in snake form. And this, a lethal attack, is likely to lead to a Perilous Vault. I'm not quite sure if Sifka's got any removal left in his hand.
He's got one Hero's Downfall left. He traded the last two for snakes. He could do it again.
I mean, I guess that he has to have something back for after the Perilous Vault, right? Because he
knows about the Soul of
threats.
Innistrad. He also knows about the whip. All right,
So,
picking
step
up
one.
his Pearl Lake.
And finally, Perilous Vault does its thing.
Yeah.
While Stanislav Sifka does have quite a full hand here, that largely due to the amount of lands he's picked up in the last few turns.
Right, he used to have a handful of spells, but Josh has forced him to use them all, or use lots of them.
And this, of course, just game 2. If Josh Adelaiden does win this, then we're going to have one whole more game of Magic in this round.
The Courser and the Soul.
And Josh, having a look at the exile pile, sees the Hero's Downfall on Soul of Innistrad. That's going away. But, of course, it will get one last shot at providing a Raise Dead on the Hornet Queen in Josh's graveyard, if Josh so chooses. He may want to wait for his graveyard to get a little bit more stacked to do that, because the Soul can return up to 3 creatures, assuming that there's enough in there.
Wow. Kentaro Yamamoto defeats William Jensen. Yamamoto picks up Magic win number 9.
3 players now.
Yeah, joining Patrick and Yuya. Jensen falls to 7 and 5. Jensen had gotten paired up, or Yamamoto had gotten paired down, however you want to look at it. So that leaves Shahar Shenhar all alone in 4th place at 8 and 4. And then everybody else is on 7-5.
Yeah.
Where
so
everybody else is Sam Black, Huey, Ichikawa, Shaun McLaren, and Turtenwald.
there's a lot of play in these last 2 rounds. It's going to be a fun time to be in the booth.
Oh, yeah.
I will be out on the floor for the last couple of rounds, but Randy, you're in for the duration for these last couple of rounds, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that if we tried to prize that seat away from you, it just would not work. So Thoughtseize meets in the gate here from Stanislav Sifka.
It'll be me and Simon down the stretch.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, along with Marshall.
And Josh, desperate to push this to a 3rd game. That was the fastest maneuver we've seen from Stanislav Sifka this entire game. He has the Dissolve ready in a heartbeat for that Whip of Erebos. Takes his lumps from Courser of Krufix, and for the umpteenth time in this game, he is down to an incredibly low life total, just the 1 life left to work with. And that turn, it looks like he did not play a Radiant Fountain or similar. I thought that there was one in his hand, signaling perhaps that there's another plan for that Course of Krufix. Dig through time on top for Josh. How many blue sources does he have there? Does he have 2? I think there's a Yavimaya Coast actually, yeah, so he'll be fine. Sylvan Caryatid fixing his mana a little bit more. Of course, with the Pearl Lake Ancient in hand, Josh knows not to make that last attack.
Mm-hmm.
pretty hefty exile piles for Josh Atherlayton at this point, considering how small his graveyard is. There's been an awful lot of cards removed one way or another. And it'll be interesting, actually, to find out quite how many cards are left in each player's deck, because while Stanislav Sivka is the one drawing lots of cards, Josh Atherlayton does do a bit of a number on his own deck with the likes of Satyr Wayfinder and so on.
This is resolved.
Sivka there gets the
Dig
Pearl Lake
and
Ancient
Pearl
down
Lake
again.
Ancient.
Yeah, the second Pearl Lake Ancient is where you start thinking about attacking, right? And a hero's downfall means that even though he's on just 3 life, he's not likely to lose all that life anytime particularly soon. Now Sivka starts looking at the number of cards
maybe
left in his deck.
15-ish. I think Josh has more.
It's pretty close.
Yeah, they're both in the teens, I think.
And both set, I mean, clearly Josh has damage that in principle can deal 3. I'm pretty sure that Sivka should be able to get up to 23 damage if he needs to. But very, very close there in terms of library sizes.
And how many does the other guy have?
So Hero's Downfall clearing a path, Pearl Lake Ancient getting in. To which Josh says, fine, you know what? My Soul of Innistrad wants to return a bunch of creatures. I'm going to make it so that I can return the full 3. Just because he's on 23 life now does not mean that that's necessarily going to last too long, as Pearl Lake Ancient does take relatively sizable hits.
Yeah, Soul of Innistrad is kind of the last thing Josh has, right?
Yeah, that's the last hurrah for the big rolling cavalcade of threats coming from Josh Atherlayton's green-black-blue deck.
Time to activate it. Gets Courser.
Hornet Queen, and I think the Sylvan Caryatid was the third one there.
Makes
Draws
sense.
a dig through time. Oh, sorry, he had the dig through time already.
It was on top.
This is the non-creature part of Josh's graveyard. They can get exiled with impunity. He's not really too fussed about them. Has a look at the top 7, which represents over half of his deck at this point, I believe.
Yeah, 13 cards was the count I heard, and I think Dig was one of those 13.
And a similar sort of amount in Sivka's deck.
Yeah, I didn't hear an exact count for Sivka. I agree that it looked similar. They were both on 13, interestingly.
So each
So
of
Josh
them,
was already going to get decked because he was drawing first after they did the count, so
yeah.
he can go ahead and dig. Sivka's not got much in his hand, though. No counter spells. Just that second Pearl Lake Ancient.
I mean, it does appear that there's Ashiok as one of the considerations for Josh Atherlayton. Now, if we're talking about the potential to deck somebody, that's a good way of doing it.
Sure.
So it's been a little while since Stanislav Sivka countered anything. He's got a reasonable number of cards in hand. I'm not quite sure how many of them are lands off Pearl Lake Ancient. If Ashiok Nightmare Weaver can start doing Ashiok's thing, then Ashiok could quite easily put this game out of reach for Stanislav Sivka.
Well, I mean, currently the Pearl Lakes can just eat Ashiok in one bite. But Hornet Queen could do a pretty good job of holding off Pearl Lakes.
And next turn, there's a very good chance that Josh is going to have enough mana to be able to do both of those things. Smile there from Stanislav Sivka. He's been looking very, very pleased with himself pretty much all weekend thus far. Big smiles on his face. He seems to be enjoying his time here in Nice immensely at the World Championship.
Been a pretty cool game. And I've been saying all along, oh, Blue-Black Control has the best late game. Blue-Black Control has the best late game. But I feel like Josh has actually maneuvered this with, 20 cards left between them. Josh is the one who's got the handful of threats. And Sivka's basically out at this point.
The funny thing about that is that more or less at the point that we joined the game, that appeared to be true. And the game has been going on for half an hour or so since then.
I don't think Josh is optimistic about this Hornet Queen resolving, but he's going to be pretty happy when it does. Yes. Reaches very quickly for those tokens. Really? It's coming in? All right, you said it was coming in.
Time bought.
Second Pearl Lake. Still not great at attacking through those Death Touchers.
A big draw here. That'll dissolve for Stanislav Sivka.
Yeah.
Not going to deal with the tokens. I mean, as it stands...
Yeah, it's 6 power, right? Are we done? Yeah, we're done. Sivka can't deal with 6 power worth of flyers. Pearl Lake could have picked up Radiant Fountains, but he can only gain 2 life to 5. So, Sivka, dead. All that, they go through 50 cards each in their libraries, and Josh is able to just resolve a Hornet Queen and attack for the last 6.
And by done, of course, what we mean is not done at all.
We mean done with game 2.
Yeah, we got a whole extra game of Magic to be going on here. Each of these players shuffling up. As much as that was a marathon, and given that their game 2 was going on after our entire feature match had finished,
right?
Game 1 was likely not quick.
Well, they got moved to the feature match area because they were finishing game 1 and there were already a couple of empty tables.
Yeah.
So it's like, let's move these guys to the feature match area just in case we need to watch them while everybody else stands around.
Yeah, we bring you as much Magic as we possibly can here in the World Championship, and plenty of Magic to watch as each of these players, they have access to each other's lists. This is a very pure game in many respects because they are able to fully sort of prepare for what they think that each other is doing. And for this deciding game,
sure.
And how important is being on the play in this? Is the fact that it goes so long means that it's not particularly relevant?
Yeah, neither one of these decks is going to curve out and beat the other guy in 5 turns.
It looks like relatively slender changes for Stanislav Sivka. He's having a last cursory look at his sideboard here before shuffling things up. Look at all the different types of tokens that we need for this matchup, though, just sort of strewn at the top end of our feature match tables here. Snake tokens, insect tokens, all sorts of different things going on here. Zombies, potentially, from Sidisi. So just to let you know, there's obviously, at this point, we're hitting a stage in the day where there's an awful lot of very, very important matches. While these players are shuffling up, we are going to take a little bit of a look over in our news desk at how things currently stand here in the World Championships. Because we've got lots of results that we've heard from elsewhere in the room. I'm Tim Willoughby here with Hall of Famer Randy Buehler. We now know that we've got 3 players sharing the 9 and 3 spot, Patrick Chapin, Yamamoto and Yuya. But to find out the entire list of that, we're going to jump across and have a look at our proper scoreboard.
All right, thanks so much, guys. We're going to bring you Game 3, of course, but the good news is that things are starting to become clear. This is the way we have it right now. Fingers crossed this is true. There are 9 players left who can be your world champion for 2014. And here they are in order. At 9 and 3, Patrick Chapin playing Abzan midrange. At 9 and 3, playing Sidisi Whip, Kentaro Yamamoto. At 9 and 3, playing Jeskai tokens, Yuya Watanabe. Now, we know for sure that if you get to 10 wins, that is utterly done and dusted. Not a problem. The question happens round about 9 and 5. So then we have 1 player alone at 8 and 4. That is Shahar Shenhar, who was 5 and 2 overnight. He is playing Sidisi Whip. If he gets to 9-4 and then 9-5, a good chance of being in with those 3 above him, quite possibly. Then you have all those 7 and 5s. There's 5 of them. We have William Jensen, Black-Green Constellation. We have Sam Black with his red-white tokens deck. We have Yuki Ichikawa with Abzan Whip. We have Shaun McLaren with Abzan midrange. and we have Owen Turtenwald with Black-Green Constellation. Those are the 9 players who can still win this world title, because at 6 and 6, Flock, Dam, Rietzel, Levy, 8 and 6 is the best they can do. That cannot get them high enough up the leaderboard. Cannot happen. So, what about the Dream Chasers? The 11 players who came into this event trying to do the double. Go not just 3 days, but go 5 days deep. I can tell you that as you look through the field, Yuya Watanabe is the captain of Team Japan at 9 and 3. He's still live to chase the dream and the double on Sunday. Shahar Shenhar is, of course, captain of Team Israel. He is still live for the double at 8 and 4. Shaun McLaren captains Team Canada. He is still live, but needs help because he's amongst the 7 and 5s. And Owen Turtenwald, who arguably had the best shot coming in because his US teammate, tremendous set of 3, Neil Oliver, Isaac Sears, and Andy Beckstrom. Those 4 together have a tremendous chance at the weekend. Owen Turtenwald is your 4th Dream Chaser still alive. The other 7 are gone. So, why don't we just take a look at those 11, our Dream Chasers for this weekend. There you see the 11. They all came in. They will all be back in action on Friday and Saturday, and they hope Sunday. But right now you see Turtenwald there in with a chance, needs to get to 9 and 5 and hope for the best. Watanabe at 9 and 3, right on the verge. He felt when he beat Patrick Chapin earlier in this round, which seems a long time ago now, he gave the fist pump, and that's not something you see a lot from Watanabe. He was super happy. He thinks that 9 and 3, even with a couple of losses, may do it for him, though he is arguably the most vulnerable of those 9 and 3s because Chapin paced the field 7 and 0 overnight, and Yamamoto has been right up there, whereas Watanabe opened 0-2, 1-3, so his tiebreaks are going to be tough, that is for sure. So those are the 11 who we'll see back on Friday and Saturday. Will we see any of them again on Sunday? It certainly looks like Watanabe is favourite on that. So once again, 9 players remain. Chapin, Yamamoto, Watanabe, right on the verge. One more win for sure, maybe even no wins in the last 2 rounds. We'll see them in. Shahar Shenhar, he's clear by a round on the chasing pack. Clear alone in 4th. A win in the next round, that would put him right on the verge. And then 5 players, and what 5 players they are. Hall of Famer Jensen, Deck Builder Black, Ichikawa with his 2 top 8s, McLaren a champion, Turtenwald the number 1. Can one of those get to number 4? So, that is where we are, but we are still waiting for a game 3 here. So, the bad news is that Josh Utter-Leyton, after doing all that incredible hard work to force game 3, he is up against it. He has mulliganed not once, but twice, and right now he is shuffling for his life, down at 5 already, and it's just getting worse from here. So, can Josh Utter-Leyton possibly overcome the blue-black grind of Stanislav Sivka? I can tell you that even Flock, who's also playing the Sivka deck, they tested together and are playing together, he's gone, he's at 6 and 6 now. But we're ready for game 3. 9 players remain. Let's head back to the feature match area.
Hello and welcome back to our bonus round, really, in the feature match area. Going to a 3rd game, and as much as there's mulligans going on, the last World Championship, I think in some respects, was defined by mulligans. Like at the very World Championship final, you had Shahar Shenhar in a bad matchup facing mulligans. We're going to get a chance to see how much those mulligans impact this last game, though, as we get a chance to see the last game between Stanislav Sivka and Josh Utter-Leyton. And here we are. It looks like we're just about kicking things off here. Josh Utter-Leyton on the right-hand side of our screen, keen to kick things off with his already 5-card hand. It starts with a polluted delta. He's got lands. That's a great start, and this is not necessarily the kind of match that was ever going to be decided in 3 or 4 turns, so not the worst place to be mulliganing. And actually with a Yeah, if you're going to have to mulligan to 5, this is a really solid start. Plenty going on for Josh Utter-Layton here. He's got an early Sidisi if he wants it. He's got Courser of Krufix to work with. He's got a Sultai Charm as well. Stanislav Sivka not really able to punish that all too much. His hand not super exciting either. We could very easily have a real game
fine.
here.
I guess it doesn't have anything to do before turn 4, but it's a bunch of lands, some card drawing, a disc. This is what control players dream of.
I can just imagine you having those dreams as well, Randy. I've got a disc? Yeah! Radiant Fountain, the 3rd land there for Stanislav Sivka. That did plenty of good work for him in Game 2, keeping him alive just long enough to make everything happen. In the meantime, though, Stanislav Sivka sitting back and just waiting to see what Josh Utter-Layton has, really. Course of Krufix coming along. He sees a Soul of Zendikar, Soul of Innistrad on top of Josh Utter-Layton's deck there, as Josh considers his 4th land. This
straight to 4, straight to Sidisi.
And of course, knowing what was on top of his deck, Josh Utter-Layton can be pretty confident that Sidisi is going to get him a zombie, assuming that it resolves at all. Sidisi says, yes, 3 cards are going to the graveyard. One of those was a Soul of Innistrad. That means I get a zombie token. Satyr Wayfinder on top potentially means quite a few more zombie tokens coming along.
But yeah, here's the Perilous Vault to clean things up.
Disdainful Stroke there, coming just too late to deal with that Perilous Vault. Not that Josh Utter-Layton is too replete with blue mana here, just the Yavimaya Coast to work with in that front. The Sultai Charm that's in Josh's hand here, potentially quite a relevant factor in this Perilous Vault battle. He gets his hits in, gets an extra zombie token from the creature coming off top, and look at that middle ability on Sultai Charm. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. That is going to spell the end of Perilous Vault, assuming that Josh wants to, and I can't really think of a better use for the charm than exactly this.
I'm surprised he's thinking this long.
You've got all the time in the world. You might as well use it, right?
Well, sure. I mean, he's down multiple cards. He's got a pretty imposing board presence.
Interesting. He's gone for the Satyr Wayfinder here.
Wow. Did he not have a land? Well, I guess he had a land anyway.
So he's got an extra zombie out of the deal. He's got the land. And now comes the Sultai Charm.
Right.
And Stan, a big smile on his face. I'm not sure if I'd still be smiling in this position because
this is a
normally when you see a mull to 5.
Yeah, this is a 5-card draw. Sivka even survive long enough to play another vault?
I mean, at the moment on the board, it may well be that this second vault isn't good enough. He says, you know what, I'm going to give it a try.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think he does survive long enough to untap. But just barely.
Now, if we learned anything from the last game, it's that regardless of how easy the first 15 points of damage are, the last 5 can be a little bit of a problem. But Josh says, well, you know what, at least let's deal with the first 15. He finds one more creature off that Sidisi, so that does mean another zombie token. And the top card is another creature there in the form of Sylvan Caryatid. I guess that for Sivka, there's still the thing of, once I deal with this early rush, even if it doesn't leave me on 5,
right,
you've got no more cards to work with.
Right, he's going to be forced to tap out in the middle of Josh's attack phase. So Josh is going to have a second main phase to do his worst. Now, Josh is down to, what, a Courser? But there is a Soul in his graveyard, so he can kind of reload that way. Also, Prolific Ancient is not a land.
Kind of nice to see that even at this very tense moment, I mean, both of these players not necessarily pushing for top 4, but this is a match for a pro point, and pro points are certainly not worth nothing. That still laughs and smiles to be shared, and there's the activation of...
Yeah, Josh is going to go ahead and do
Soul.
this during Sivka's end step. Plenty good enough. 2 Sidisi's and a Sage. Yeah. And Sivka's fine. I'll blow the disc. We know this is gonna happen.
So 3 life left for Stanislav Sivka, but quite possibly a reasonable amount of game.
Well, I mean, Josh just plays a Sidisi here. While Sivka's tapped out. Sivka doesn't really have an answer to Sidisi in his hand. He's got a Pearl Lake Ancient that he can flash down as a blocker. Although
He'll still be
Josh
taking
actually
2
knows
from the
about
zombie,
that.
though, right?
Exactly.
Assuming that there is a zombie.
And there might be 2 zombies by then. Oh,
Or
that's
there
a
might
swing
not
and
be
a miss.
any zombies.
Swing and a miss.
Yeah. So that's Sylvan Caryatid. That was a big miss. I mean,
Yep.
it would be fair to say that Josh has had a fair amount of hits this game thus far.
Yes.
But Sivka takes a look at his hand. He's
Wow.
Chase's ingenuity.
That's
Fine.
a bold play. Does he have a... He's a gain land, okay. Like Sidisi's not lethal all by herself.
Despise there, giving Stanislav Sivka the option of taking any one of the cards in Josh Layton's hand. They're all creatures. Takes Courser of Krufix. And Dismal Backwater just barely keeping him alive. Mana Confluence the draw there for Josh Layton.
I mean, attack with Sidisi. Hitting here is pretty big. It does
Hits
hit.
a Hornet Queen.
So now there's a potentially lethal zombie for next turn. Pearl Lake
Sivka
Ancient
on
can't
1.
block both of them.
I think it's nice of Josh to show us that even like his deck can win slowly, and sometimes it potentially, certainly don't want to call this one early because it feels to me like Stanislav Sivka has demonstrated he can stay alive for quite a while. But
Wow. Yeah, he's
Josh
just
can
gonna run out
potentially
Sage.
win pretty fast also.
Perilous Vault's not super relevant to this game, Josh decides. He just wants to go as wide as he can. Now Sivka, on 1 life, basically has to deal with Sidisi and a zombie and a Reclamation Sage.
It's a big ask.
It is a big ask. A lot of people will run out of 2-1 like that. Just like vanilla 2-1, not going to blow anything up. But Josh knew that was kind of the clincher.
And a smile and a handshake there from the number 13th ranked pro, Stanislav Sivka, as he loses to Josh Layton. Josh now up to an even record,
6 and 6.
6.
He can still get into the top 8, which is worth money.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously every pro point matters, but the last of our games here in round 12. It's been a marathon round. We've had a few of them in standard, it must be said, but still 2 rounds to go and so much to play for at this point.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be a big round.
Yeah, I mean...
You've got this interesting thing with the way the pairings work, too, where, the guys at the top of the standings aren't necessarily going to get paired against the other guys at the top of the standings because they've already played in the 2 previous rounds of Standard. Now, the way it does work, if you're not familiar with one of these multi-format tournaments, you can play somebody as many as 5 different times. But
one of them would be on Sunday.
On Sunday, right. You can only play them once per format. So in theory, you could play somebody in Draft, and then Modern, and then Other Draft, and then Standard, and then on Sunday. But you can't play them twice in Standard.
As it is, though, the players are going to be finding out who they're playing soon enough because this is the end of round 12. We're going to head back to the news desk as we pair up ready for round 13 here at the World Championships.
I don't know if you're superstitious. Round 13, lucky for some, as they say. 9 players remain. Chapin, Yamamoto, Watanabe, 9 and 3. Shenha, 7 and 4. Then Jensen, Black, Ichikawa, McLaren, Turtenwald, 7 and 5. Those are the 9. We'll have time to get into that in just a moment. But a man who has been waiting very patiently through all that incredible magic is a Hall of Famer, Raf Levy. He's here to talk decks and get down to the bare bones of his deck this weekend in Standard. So let's hand you over to the wall, Raf Levy, and first, Brian David Marshall.